it's Susan here from Komori no Hime Cosplay, and today we're going to be making a Baby Yoda costume from The Mandalorian. To make Baby Yoda's coat, I'm going to be using the Simplicity 9163, their unofficial Baby Yoda coat pattern. For the base fabric, I'm using the anti-pill fleece from Joann's. I think the color of this is camel. And then this fake fur is from SY Fabrics, and I think the color for this one is oatmeal. First, I took each of the base coat pieces and sewed a line of stitching to stay stitch along the neckline to keep it from warping out of place, though the pattern did say that this step isn't really necessary for knit fabrics. Sew the two back pieces together along the center back seam and top stitch to give it a bit more detail. Though the material I'm using is fleece and it's a bit thick, so my top stitching is not the most even, but it's not that big of a deal. Sew the sleeve pieces to the coat along the arm's eye, so it's kind of a flap right now. Then we're going to top stitch to give it a bit more detail. In the show, Baby Yoda has a strip of fabric that goes down the top of the sleeve. This particular pattern didn't come with that piece, so I just cut a strip about 2 inches wide of the fleece, and I'm going to sew it onto the coat. Now, if you're using a fabric that frays, you could fold the edges inward and then sew it down so you don't have raw edges, but since this material doesn't fray and I'm more concerned about it being too thick to sew through, I'm just going to sew it down along either side. And here's what it looks like with the strip sewn into place. Sew the coat together along the side seams, starting at the bottom of the sleeve and working the way down to the bottom hem, then top stitch, starting at the bottom and working the way back. Cut 2 of the cuff pieces out of the fake fur, then we're going to fold them in half. Sew them together along the side, turn it right side out, and then sew the 2 ends together. Sew the cuff to the bottom of the sleeve, and then top stitch. Because the material was so thick, I found I did have to pretty much use the hand crank on my machine to sew this line of stitching, which is not ideal, but it is better than breaking a needle. Cut 2 of the band pieces out of the fleece and putting right sides together, fold them in half and sew them together along the flat end. Turn the band right side out, then we're going to sew a line of stitching to hold the raw edges together, and we're going to sew a line of top stitching all along the folded edge. Putting right sides together, sew the band to the front of the coat. Then fold the pieces over and we're going to top stitch them into place, and doing this on both sides of the coat. Fold the bottom hem of the coat upward so that it is as parallel as you can make it, then machine sew that into place. And for this little bit that was left open, I hand sewed that closed so there wouldn't be a hole at the hem that you could potentially get your shoe caught in. Cut 2 of the collar pieces out of the fake fur, and putting right sides together, we're going to sew them together along both of the shorter sides and one of the longer sides, leaving the bottom long side open. Turn the collar piece right side out and sew it together along the bottom edge. One thing I should point out is that I did end up having to recut this collar piece because when I held it up to my coat, it was way too short. As you can see, I added quite a bit of length to it, so I do recommend waiting on cutting out the collar until you have the coat mostly completed. Putting right sides together, sew the collar to the neckline of the coat. My machine refused to top stitch the collar into place, so instead I sewed a line of almost fake top stitching along the edge of the collar, then trimmed away the excess fleece, folded the fur over, and then just hand sewed it into place. Then I hand sewed large snaps onto the jacket to act as closures. The pattern called for using 5 snaps, however, I found that that was not enough, so I ended up using 10 snaps to go all the way down the front of the coat. And now we have a completed Baby Yoda jacket. To finish off the costume, I used a green curly wig from the 5 Wits wigs, and then for the ears, I simply used the official ears that I found in the party supply section of Target. And with that, the Baby Yoda costume is done. For more cosplay tutorial videos, please subscribe, and thank you so much for watching!